They'll be calling you a radical. March Madness. Fuck, is it March Madness around here this year? Holy shit. So, for all those years, we had all those great March Madness games right here, right? Right there. First, second round. Why? Because of the great Arnie Farron. Arnie Farron passed away this year. Arnie Farron has a ring. Wasn't that the first NBA championship? Yeah, he was on that team, 49-50 Lakers. Yeah, that Arnie Farron. Ogden High School. He was head of the committee. This beautiful, incredible palace. This thing is a masterpiece, by the way. I was talking to the manager who runs the show, and I'm like, this thing is. He says, oh yeah, and he said they backed out. They were going to do some work on it. And I'm like, I said, leave it alone. He says, oh yes. So, Arnie Farron passed away this year. So, this video is about the great Dillon Jones. So, Dillon got the MVP today. Like, everybody didn't know that was coming. But, it's odd because he's one of the top 5 finalists for the Julius Erving Award. And that ties to Ogden Willie Sojourner. He's only a few rebounds away from passing Willie. Now remember, Dillon did this traditionally. Now, he's listed as a junior, but it's still his 4th year. Everybody's listed as a junior. The whole COVID thing has made college basketball so unfair. I mean, well, it made everything unfair, didn't it? So, we're players playing against 27-year-olds. I mean, Moody's the oldest guy in the freaking country. He plays at Montana. So, Dillon gets the Big Sky Player of the Year, but it's more than that. We go back to this Purple Palace. When I was a young honor student, I used to go from the school to here it's where I cut my teeth, freaking learning to plot things. It's unbelievable. It's like the capitulation, 1975, 76, 75, to the great artists in America. So, Arnie Farron, who went to Ogden High School, won national championships at the University of Utah, won NBA championships. He was head of the committee. I watched Jason Kidd's last game in there when they got upset by the Cheeseheads. I watched Jimmy Valvano in the second round cut down the nets as what were they, a 6, 7, 8 seed? I watched the McRae brothers in there. When they won the national championship, they came through Weber State. I go on and on and on about the great. It used to be so exciting around here tournament time. Watch Weber State as a 6 seed get beat by Lamar in the first round by Tubbs. That was Billy Tubbs' team. That's the beginning of the great heartbreak losses at Weber State. So all these people that came before Dillon, these MVPs, I still was, I worked for Bagelin then. I was a student professor of the Number School of Business. I knew Ruben Nemhart personally. He's still what a player. Ruben Nemhart, Jimmy DeGraffiti won it the next year. They won a tournament game, NCAA tournament game. So, of course, Lillard won this title, didn't he? Oh, yeah. 2 years in a row, didn't he? Yeah. He, before him, that little run right there, McCoy, they didn't even play in the NCAA tournament, those 3. They got beat. I've dedicated the season this year to Anthony Johnson, Montana, who had the greatest performance in the history of that building. He was passed away this year. But all these great players in front of Dillon Jones in this building. Joe Ballenboy, whoa. Scotty Bamforth, whoa. Jeremy Sieglin, again, Ruben Nemhart. Jimmy DeGraffiti, who I really think should have been the coach here, but that's another story. All these greats that played here in this building, even before in the Swenson, Willie Sojourner, Justin Thigpen, they didn't have an MVP in those days. But all these players that have won the MVP playing at Weber, the great Harold Arsenault, the show, Eddie Gill, none of them had numbers like this. None of them had numbers like this. None of them. He's the only player in the country to lead a conference in all three: points, average per game, rebounds, assists. You know, he's right there with Stills. He's the all-time still leader in the history of this school. You know, and when you could, on the verge of passing Willie Sojourner, what a player. Oh my God, what a player. He's 6'6", Dillon. So the irony of this with Dillon is he's up for the Julius Erving. Oh my God, before there was Michael Jordan, there was Julius Erving. Him and Sojourner were drafted the same year by the Virginia Squires. They played together. Best friends. Sojourner was his best man. You know, Sojourner always claims he's the one that named him the doctor. So, is Dillon Jones really a forward? I don't think so. Dillon Jones is a point guard. Dillon Jones is a point guard. Watch him. Well, I mean, it's so hard to call it because, I mean, he'll be on the floor right here and he'll play center on defense, point guard on offense. But you watch him. He's supposedly the forward. He always drops back and the guard always gives him the ball. At the midcourt, when the play starts, every single time. And he plays more minutes than probably anyone in the country. It's Dillon Jones. He's not a forward. He's a point guard. And you can argue with all you want, but you're not paying attention if you don't think he's a point guard. I mean, his numbers are so staggering. I've watched him from the day he got here. You know, when he knocked out the referee on accident up there at Idaho State. And, you know, I've had so many discussions with him. He's not Lillard. I mean, Lillard was this superstar, confident, unbelievable young player. Like, I remember when we got him here, I'm like, we got an NBA player. I thought he was an NBA player in high school. You know, I saw his films. A lot of people did. And he proved it. The greatest steal in modern draft history. I mean, this is right up there with the Stockton and Malone steals back when the Jazz knew how to draft. You know, just remember the Jazz passed on Tony Parker. The Jazz passed on Chris Paul. I mean, I go on and on and on, those guys. So, what an honor. But statistically, you look at these numbers, you know, Brent did a really great job for the Standard. By the way, without him, the Standard's the worst paper on earth, except for him, Brent. He's fantastic, excellent. Well, thank God we have him, because the Standard, I mean, Standard's a paper that's run out of Provo. Now, we don't have an Ogden paper. You know, we should start one. A bunch of us should get together and just call it the Ogden paper, the Ogden online paper. Maybe I'll tag this, the Ogden online paper. You know, but he's all over it all the time. He does excellent work, you know. And so I'm going to start working because it's such an historic year, 1824. And I was going to start this tonight, but I'll probably start it in the morning because I want my mind fresh. And because 1824 is when Jim Bridger got here. And I like to, when we were kids growing up here, right here, this was sacred, really hallowed ground. This is very controversial here. Very sacred ground right here. That's why they call it Shadow Valley. This is Shoshone land. Jim Bridger got here in 1824, and you see people all the time trying to tell you that Jim Bridger discovered the Great Salt Lake. He got here in 1824. Came down the Bear River, the Ashley 100. Who's the savages? You know, William Glass got here late, a little bit later, you know, because he got ripped up by the bear. And Jedediah Smith, but Jim Bridger didn't discover the Great Salt Lake. You know, we know Father Escalante and Dominguez explored it. We know for a fact they were here in 1776, at least. So, but remember the Shoshone lived here. So when I was a boy, I grew up out there. My Uncle Gib had that cool shack where he collected all the native artifacts, and we had great teachers. I mean, T.O. Smith's wife, Olin Walker's mother, was my second grade. I mean, we got taught native history, the real native history. We got taught Shoshone history. Shoshone. We got taught it here. You know, I lived out there on the edge of the lake where they all wintered. You know, and so Bridger had 3 wives. You know, his third wife, little fun, Shoshone. You know, and I'm going to start doing more and more work because it's 200 years. I mean, the first settlers here, non-native. I mean, Escalante explored, but he didn't settle here and stay here. Bridger and crew did, the Ashley 100, and they were here for what? Money. Bridger adopted native boys. He had 3 wives, you know. Well, died. Chiwaski's wife. That's why it's called Wasatch, right? To hide. You know, hiding their stash. They were here after the fur. They were here for money. You know, and I'm going to start it tomorrow because it's 1824. It's 200 years. It's so historic. What we've done to the ecology here in 200 years actually blows my mind. But I wanted to get this up for Dillon, you know, because his numbers are staggering. You know, but Weaver State has, I'm going to quote the incredible Harold Arson of the show. I'm going to quote him here. Right here. I stood with Eddie Gill and Dillon. You know, he broke his record while Eddie was here. You know, we did the 25-year ceremony on the 1999 win. Harold Arson of the show on midcourt. He says, you know, we went in and we beat North Carolina in the NCAA tournament. We sent a packet. We should have beat Florida. We had Florida beat. Had them beat. You know, and we rocked the world. We changed the world. We shook it up. You know, and he went on and he says, we're waiting for the next team to go in the NCAA tournament and shake it up and knock some teams over and do their thing. Last words. He looks, we're still waiting. 25 fucking years. The 68-69 went to the Sweet 16. Should have been the 8. Sakowitz called me and read me the riot act the other day. Just the front. What players? There was 3 guys that went drafted in the NBA off that team. Sojourner and Thickpen and Larry, Trailblazers. Of course, the great Damian Lillard. What he's done in the NBA just, well, it's staggering. I mean, makes my head swim. It really blows my mind, actually. And I knew how great he was and good he was the whole time he was here. But Dillon grew. I've always tried to talk Dillon every chance I've got, which is every game. I've always stayed close to him, and because I knew that it was a confidence thing. He wanted to learn, and he needed it. You could feel it, and you could see it. He didn't really understand. I don't think coaches have ever done him right as far as that goes. And by the way, Dillon Jones, I believe, is like Damian Lillard. He could put up 40 or 50 anytime, like Jerry Carding was here. He could put up 40 or 50 anytime he wanted. And these coaches won't let him. And I think, you know, he gets down a little bit, but who don't? He's a young guy. This is watching young men mature into men. You know, as Dillon says, I grew up here. And so I've always tried to help him out, and not in a false bravado way, in a reality way. Hey, Dillon, you know, he's always picking my brain about this. No, do you realize what you are and what you're doing? I don't think you get it. You're a legendary, historic player. And I started seeing this a couple years ago. I named him Dillon Magic Jones. You know, he's a point guard. I got news for you. He'll play point guard in the NBA, and I tell him this all the time. He'll be a superstar in the NBA. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I've never seen a player like this. Never. And his statistics and his number, and the Big Sky is tough as hell. This league, you know, Brent steals my cliche, rock throwing contest. I'm the one that's first started calling that, but do not kid yourself. You know, it's nasty league. It's a tough ass fucking league with lots of good players. You know, Weaver State always has great players. So he's the greatest in the history. I never thought anybody passed Jerry Carding. I never thought anybody could pass Jerry Carding. And by the way, if you're not paying attention, look what Jerry Carding does in Europe. Oh my God. He just shot, he's a guard, 6-foot guard, who shot 62% from the field last year. For the season! You heard me. The other thing about Dillon that I don't think people are paying attention to, you got to look at that left, Jerry. The other thing about Dillon Jones that I don't think people... 5 games where the game was on the line, everybody on the court, both teams knew he was getting the ball. 5 for 5. You know what he does with free throws? For that last game, he was 11 for 11. He's typically 11 for 11, 10 for 10. I mean, these great players that played here, like Damian Lillard, like Eddie Gill, they make free throws. Like Jerry Carding, like Jeremy Singland. I mean, these great guards we were talking about. We were talking about the other day, and I remember the great Ron Baglin, who Sackowitz reminds me, he says, you know Bagelin's the greatest coach you ever played. And this is a guy who played for the great Phil Johnson on that great 68, 69. It was only 20. Phil Johnson should have coached the Jazz. They would have several rings. What a great, great coach. A Bagelin, he says, I says, yeah. I remember what a Bagelin used to do with Ruben Nenhart. They'd get in any kind of trouble at all. They would spread the court, put him down on the post. And he was unstoppable as a guard on the post. That's the way Dillon is. Dillon will go coast to coast with that really high dribble like Magic. Then Daniels tells me, well, you said he's like Carmelo. I've never said he's like Carmelo. This is how young these guys are. Confused. No, Adrian Dantley. There's a big difference. He reminds me of Adrian Dantley at the rim a lot. Adrian Dantley was a scoring machine at the rim. If you don't know about Adrian, you don't know shit about basketball. He was a scoring machine. And he'd fight at the rim. He played, at the same size as Lillard is, but he played like he's 5-6 inches taller. So congratulations to Dillon. It's more than just the Big Sky Player of the Year. They go up to Boise on that infamous day, 13 years, Fukushima. Ooh, it was actually the 10th here that night. That's the day that Anthony Johnson beat these guys. That was March 10th, exactly the year before. 3-11-11, 13 years. They'll be in Boise. They got to win 3 in a row. 3 not. They can do it. They can do it. But the whole COVID era is tough. You got old players. But Dillon's done it traditionally. He didn't transfer. He didn't pop. He stayed. He could have went a late first rounder last year, and he stayed. But from him last year to this year, and he was great last year. Well, he's stratosphere great this year. I mean, it's like night and day, his improvement. His game, that step back he has now, he didn't have that. He's a great three-point shooter. I mean, like I said, from the line, his defense. Somebody's always asking about his defense. I said, why do you care about defense in the NBA? Like you have any. I says, okay. He's the all-time leading steals in the history of the school. What does that say? You think he could play defense? So, congratulations to Dillon. And maybe I'll tag the new Ogden paper, because we don't have one. And we have Brent. He does excellent fucking work. So, congratulations to the great Dillon Jones. And you go through these numbers. Brent does a good job on numbers. He's got it in there. And I'll post his great article. So, congratulations, Dillon. I tell him, you promised me an NCAA tournament win. You promised me that. Yeah, I know. Go up to Boise and do your thing, man. And I have a hunch that his next few games, if they get it, they got to play Montana State. It's one game at a time. I got a hunch, just my gut instinct, that Dillon Jones is going to put up legendary numbers, I think, on March 11th. I got a hunch. So am I going to Boise? I don't know. Let's see how the 3-11 thing works out. Always, right? Always. How about those snowflakes right here? Are you the biggest fucking snowflakes I ever saw today? Holy shit. Congratulations, Dillon. Dantley. Magic Jones, as I named him. Stand tuned.